To introduce the second speaker, who is Masanori Hongo, and Mas has been for 15 years the person who ran the flower market, the manager at the flower market, and really expanded the market a great deal. In fact, as your agenda here says, that during his 15 years, it he expanded it by 20,000 square feet at a cost of $3.8 million, but actually he was able to do that with his creative financing. He's quite a business person, has been a business person in Hawaii and all over California, but obviously a very astute businessman who can expand the market like that. And as we all know right now, the history behind the flower market and how special it is throughout California. So I think Mas had a very special place in that. And in addition, he's a veteran after World War II, or shortly thereafter. He was inducted in the U.S. Army, and he was there for 3 years, and then he ultimately went to graduate school at University of California, Berkeley, where he graduated. But during the war, just before the war, he was a student at Sacramento Junior College, and so from Hawaii, since he was in Sacramento, he ultimately went into camp himself. So he went into Topaz, and ultimately he took over the family business, the flower business. But one of the things I wanted to highlight that I think is a very special experience that Mas has had is that he really is very much rural and urban. I think a lot of people have only a rural or only an urban, but he definitely had quite a mixture of urban to rural experiences, and from Hawaii to the mainland. And I wanted to begin by, or during this introduction, just briefly share with you a little bit from his book that he wrote, A Barefoot Boy from Hilo. And I thought that his introductory words are something that the group would very much like to hear, so I want to read the first portions of his book, what he wrote. I have been thinking for a number of years of looking back on the road of my early life. I never had shoes to wear. I ran around barefoot until high school. I could walk over coral rocks or even railroad tracks without a problem. The soles of my feet were like leather. Once in a while, I used to get a puncture when I stepped on a nail sticking up. So to fix the puncture up, I'd rub the juice of hono grass and pounded it with pahaoe rock, a solid rock as opposed to a jagged one. Such was the primitive life in the town of Hilo. It has been interesting, but also like a dream, with so much happening along the way, like going from an unpaved road with grass growing in the middle of it to the superhighways of today. Reducing my thoughts and memories into this computer is a story in itself. It has not been an easy task for me, as I am not a literary person. I am a businessman, but also that barefoot Hawaiian-born person raised in a primitive environment, so my thought processes may seem odd to many. I think to reply in Japanese, Filipino, Hawaiian, Portuguese, Korean, Chinese, Pidgin English, or Haikea English. In other words, I get all mixed up with a little different sense in understanding a problem or question, as such language has different values and outlooks. So in any instant, I think in the language that best applies to the situation. Since I grew up in such an isolated area away from the large city, everything was different. I grew up outside the city of Hilo in the little fishing village of Waiakea, just a country boy living in innocence. The rest of the world was beyond my comprehension, living in the tropics, adjoining a jungle-like area close to the ocean. Well, he still happens to be very close to the ocean, where he ran in a very urban environment the flower market. So with that, I'd like to present Masanori Hongo.
Thank you, Rita. I came to California from Hilo, Hawaii in August of 1940 because I thought, gee, if I don't get education, what am I going to do? I don't want to stay in Hilo all my life. So I caught the American President line and came to San Francisco, then on to Sacramento. And there I attended the Sacramento Junior College. And one of my teachers was Mr. Nolan. Mr. Nolan's father was the editor of the Oakland Tribune. And he was one of the bigwigs of the Republican Party. And it was on that day that Roosevelt gave a speech about the days of infamy. And after the speech, Mr. Nolan told us, all you men, wait for the government to call you, and when they need you, they will call for you. And that's how the beginning of World War II started for me. When the segregation orders came down, there were a couple of Japanese people that helped me. First of all, I had no place to stay. So Sumio Miyamoto, he had 3 kids, he took me in, he fed me, and he boarded me. And then he took me down to the Sacramento Army Hall for me to go to Marysville, Aboga Assembly Center. And I also met up with Dr. Masaatsu Harada, MD. He told me that, why don't you come with me? I'll be your guardian, and you can be my ward. So we shook hands, and we had a bonding there. So we were one of the first ones to leave for the assembly center that was in May 7th, 1942, on Tuesday. We went to Marysville Assembly Center, where I worked as a laboratory technician. You know, there's 2 things in life you need. You need to be fed. Second of all, people get sick. So we did 2 fundamental things in the laboratory. Urinalysis and read the red and white cell counts. This gives you what infection is happening in the body. So, you know, you're not a professional person. You get woken up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and the doctor says, hurry up, hurry up. So I gave the reading. The white cells count is very high. And he tells me, oh, he doesn't have appendicitis. So I go in make another slide and recheck, make sure that my numbers are correct. So there was a lot of pressure for me in that way. But at least I felt that I was able to help the people in the camps. And from Marysville, we got sent up to Topaz. And I understand that Dr. Arada had an argument with some of the doctors, so we got sent down to Topaz. In Topaz, there were only 2 doctors who were just interns, just got out of medical school. So we set up the operating room. And then Dr. Arada started doing all the operation in camp. Prior to that, they had to go out to Delta to do the operation. And I got a job as an ambulance driver. There was no ambulance. I was given a Plymouth sedan, you know, the black sedan, these have narrow doors. So one day, I'm told to go to a certain block, and somebody died, go pick him up. Well, never in my life I've touched anybody dead. So I go there, and then I see a lot of young people there, so he says, well, I'm going to put them in the trunk, in the back seat. So these things are racing in my mind. So I says, well, I think I better put them in the back seat. So I throw in the sack of rice in the back trunk. So it's the first time I have to leave. So I grab him by the head. I never carried a dead man in my life. And they're heavy. So you finally got him in the back seat. I drove him back to the hospital and thought, oh, there's a dead guy in the back seat. You guys go pick him up. And so that was my experience in camp. So then I left camp early on. I was one of the first ones to leave. I left in early January. And I went to Chicago. And I was supposed to get money from my father, but then I get a letter from my mother telling me my father's assets are frozen. So now in my mind I'm racing, I'm thinking what I should do. I have to work for a living. So I figured, well, they sent me to school here, so I think I should continue going to school because I want to work for any kind of industry. Then I think my education will stop. So I went to the YMCA college. It was in downtown LaSalle Street. So I went there. And I started taking some courses in the morning, and they got me a job at a railroad magazine as an office boy. And I spent 5 years. And finally, in 1945, got a call from the Army because in 1940, the first non-wartime call-up was done, but I had a leaking heart going out for track at Sacramento Junior College, so I was given deferment of 5 years. So, also on that day I got my draft notice. I got from the Navy, to whom I have requested for passage back to Hawaii. So I got a notice to go to San Francisco and wait for passage back to Hawaii. So the next day I left Chicago, stopped on the way, stayed in Denver. Then I went to Salt Lake and stayed in Salt Lake for a week or so. Then I got to San Francisco. Then down in the Civic Center, I used to go to an office there. And they tell me come back tomorrow, 10 o'clock. So I did that for about a week and a half. Then they told me, okay, go down to Pier 39, you know where the AT&T park just on the other side? So I took a cab and went out there. And I got on the ship. And who do I meet on the ship? An old classmate who lived 1 block away. A guy named Graf. He's a seaman on the ship. And he tells me this ship was captured by the United States in World War I. And it went only about 2 or 3 knots. It took us 10 days from San Francisco to Honolulu. That's how slow it was. Then when I got back to Hilo, the draft board is waiting for me. So there was going to be, I think I got to Hilo on about Wednesday. It says, the following week, Saturday, there's going to be an induction. So report to the Armory Hall. So I reported to the Armory Hall, and there were about 200 of us. We got on transport from Hilo to Honolulu into Schofield Barracks. And the Schofield Barracks, we stayed there until a ship came, Navy transport, took us to Fort Mason. We got off Fort Mason, and they took us to Angel Island. We stayed there for 3 days because we were from the tropics. The only thing we had was khakis. So they gave us all woolen clothes, the heavy, brown coat. They gave us that. And then we went over to Pittsburgh, where they had the barracks there. And we waited for about a week. And we got on the train. And naturally, you close your windows going through town. And they didn't know where we were going. Start moving, 2-3 days, and finally we ended up in Fort Hood, Texas. And there went to basic training. And it was about 2.5 months. All of a sudden they took me out and they said, report to the radio station. So I go to the radio station. There's some other Japanese guys. We didn't know where we're going. So we got on this train. And we traveled for about 3 days. And in those days, the train didn't go straight. You had to wait because they were carrying troops and they were carrying military equipment all over the country. So you'd be waiting for 1 hour, then all of a sudden, the train would pass by, whizzing by. And then you wait another half an hour or 1 hour, then you get on your way again. So it took us about 3 days to get to Minnesota. We didn't know where we were going, but we ended up in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So, got to Minnesota, and they took us to military intelligence school, language school. And so, they classify you, they give you an exam, class 1, 2, 3, and I was in class 2. In class 2, you have to memorize 75 characters every day, Monday through Friday, and you get an exam on Saturday. So the training was very, very rigorous. And from there, they closed the military intelligence school in Minnesota and moved it down to Monterey. So we got on the train, went all the way to San Francisco, and from there, the ship took us to Honolulu, and we got 10 days leave. Then we waited another month before a ship came and took us to Japan. We went to Japan, and we were billeted at the ATIS, Allied Translation Interrogation Section. It was the old NYK building. And while I was there, I was told go to Waseda to do some teaching. So I went there. And these are the students who are going to be the leaders of tomorrow. Knowing this, I told them, the democracy in the United States came about with bloodshed. People died early on, and also when they formed unions, the Haymarket, the Indiana porters tried to form a union, and they got killed. So I impressed on them that democracy didn't come at a cheap price. So after that, I got assigned to Radio Tokyo interrogation and interrogation section. And so anytime there's a problem, they were told us to go out. And the lieutenant and I were the only military people, but we had on our staff all the professors, geography, history, sociology, mining, whatever. So we can pick the brains to find out what we can do for Japan to recover, to be whole again. So, by that time, Korean War started to heat up. And then they were starting to require less time in the army before you can be discharged. Something it was like you had to stay 60 months, 5 years. Then it goes down to 55 months, 50 months, 48 months. You keep on going down. And finally, as soon as it came time that I had enough time, I left. And so I got on a ship, took me down to Saipan, Guam, and back to Hawaii, to Schofield Barracks, where I was discharged. And so I thought, gee, I would like to continue my studies, and now I had GI Bill, right? So I got free education. So I came to Berkeley to go to school there. And now, from 10,000 students, we have 30,000 students. And there were I met up with a lot of Japanese students here. And I stayed at Euclid Hall, which was a Japanese dormitory before the war. So I would stay there. Then when I graduated, 1 year, they kicked me out. They wanted the freshmen to get there. So then I spent, a couple of years. I went to law school for a year, primarily my interest is to know about property and contracts, because I was going to be in business. And so I went back to get my master's degree. And I wasn't the most brilliant student. But I used to dream of questions before the exams. 3 questions, word for word. Or it might be 1 word. White House. Oh, that's the English Parliament system. But I always used to get these things, so it used to help me a lot. And so I graduated there. And my mother calls me. My father had an asthmatic attack, and then they need me to go back home because they had a backyard orchid business. So then we leased 5 acres, started growing wood roses and orchids. Well, we had 1 million wood roses. How do you grow them? You got to sell them. So I used to come over to the West Coast, go up and down the coast and sell it to the Los Angeles market, the San Francisco market, and to Seattle and Vancouver. And let me tell you, as you go north, the more conservative they are. I couldn't sell in Seattle, but I had a fellow by the name of Ford that I knew in Vancouver, so he was able to buy some. So, you gotta always, you got a problem, you gotta resolve it. So there was this Italian guy that had about 3 flower shops. So I figured, well, he has enough capacity. So I went to talk to him. Then I made a deal that I was selling a small box of stuff, foliage primarily. So I went back to Hawaii and started shipping it. Slowly, started using it. Shipping got bigger and bigger. So that's how I resolved the problem in Seattle. So this gave me a great opportunity to grow a business by using my education try to resolve problems as they arose. So finally, we had a shop down in LA and a shop in San, then we're shipping on consignment to San Francisco. And the consignment in San Francisco was not working too well. So finally, I thought I'd come over here and open up a wholesale business. So you know how it is, through connections and all this connections. I got the first sublease in the flower market. And then I grew the business, and finally, everything changes. So after about 5 years, it changed, and then the position for the flower market managership came up. So I didn't know this thing was going to go on that Saturday, and it was like Monday. They were going to choose a new manager. So I started pulling strings, and I got the special, review before you go to the board. Pull some strings, and I got a special interview, and I got placed in the, I was the sixth guy to be put into the group to be chosen for the new manager. So Saturday came, and I knew the former managers, so I told him, hey, I gotta go play golf in Marin County, so hey, can I call you? Give me your telephone number, see what happens. So I told him, can you put me on the first on the interview? So he put me on the first in the interview, and I went to play golf. Then I called Dr. Taube up, he says, oh, you get the job. So that's how I got the job at the flower market. And, business evolves. You need to expand. So we had a chance to buy the 20,000 square feet property adjoining. It costs about $1.5 million to buy it, but it would cost another $1.5 million to fix it. The lights, you gotta put everything else in, you gotta changing the fence and everything else in there. And there was a big platform, concrete platform, because they used to store cases of beer there. So we have to knock that down. So then, how do we raise the money to pay for this? So we had an attorney by the name of Steve Nagashima, and he went to JANL with me. And so, between the two of us, we figured, well, we have to break this whole thing up into 3 pieces. One was a note, 10-year note, with a high interest rate. Second, we borrowed from the bank. And third, we sold additional stocks. But of course, we got to get okay from the Secretary of State, so that was no problem. He just wrote a letter wanting a piece of stock. outstanding stocks. So that's how we got the finances together and we expanded the market. So for me it was challenges, different kinds of problems, and always it was actually fun for me, because trying to cut the nut, trying to break that nut, you have to think from inside out as well as outside in. And so all my life I have challenges, and because I think of my education, I was able to handle these things. And I'm thankful that things happen, and we Japanese were allowed to do business again in California. In despite of the incarceration. And I feel sorry for the older people that had families, because I knew they went through a lot. They lost a lot. And some never recovered again. So I think for the future, still freedom and democracy is not given on a silver platter. You have to fight for it, and you have to defend it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mas. And we'll do the same thing now as we did after the first speaker. If anybody has a question right now, you'll be able to come back to it too. But